Okay, so we're first going to go through and figure out what all the x-intercepts are. You plug 0 in for y, and you then essentially just set the numerator equal to 0. So for number 1, for x-intercept, we set 0 equal to the numerator, because when you multiply the denominator, it cancels out. When we solve, we have to take the square root of negative 3 over 2, and there are no real values, so you can't plot any dots on the x-axis. Let's look at number 2. So if we plug 0 in, the denominator cancels. When we solve for the numerator, we take the square root of 25, we get plus or minus 5, so you have 2 x-intercepts. Next, let's go through the problems and find the vertical asymptotes. So remember, v, u, x. Vertical looks like this, and they're the x equal asymptotes. That's when we set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. So for number 1, if we set the denominator equal to 0 and solve, we end up getting x equals 0. So that's going to be the vertical asymptote, which we put right here. For the second one, if we set the denominator equal to 0, we end up getting 4. So that is the vertical asymptote. X is 4. And if you look at number 3, for the vertical asymptote, if we set the denominator equal to 0, we get plus or minus square root of 16, which is plus or minus 4. So if we had to draw this on a graph, we would have a vertical asymptote here and an asymptote here. If you look at number 4, if we set the denominator equal to 0, to find the vertical asymptotes, we have to get everything on one side, factor, and set our factors equal to 0, and solve, so we get x is negative 1 and negative 4. Again, we would have 2 vertical asymptotes in this case. And for number 5, if we're trying to again find the vertical asymptotes, we set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. And when we do that, we add 8 and divide by 2. We've got a little cutoff, so we have x squared equals 4. And when we take the square root, when it's an even index, we write plus or minus. So we have asymptotes that's x equals plus or minus 2. So if we had to draw that on a graph, we have a vertical asymptote here at negative 2 and one here at positive 2. Okay, now to find horizontal asymptotes, we'll do these in yellow. So horizontal are the harder ones, HOY. They're horizontal, they're y equals. There are 3 types. When the top is smaller, it's always going to be y equals 0. When the top is larger, it's always going to be none. And when they're the same, it's front number over front number. So if we look at the first one, we check out the degrees. Since the degree on the top is smaller than the bottom, since the degree on the top is smaller, then we will have y equals 0. So we'll do a horizontal y equals 0. And then if we look at number 2, we compare the degrees. If the degree on top is larger, then it's going to be none. So we don't have a horizontal asymptote. If we look at number 3, the degree on top is smaller, so it's going to be y equals 0. And remember, y equals 0, it cuts through the x-axis. Number 4, if we check out the degrees are the same, so it's front number over front number. So the front number on top is 2, front number on bottom is 1. So y equal 2 over 1 becomes y equal 2. So if we had to draw that, it would be about here on our graph. And for number 5, we check out the degrees. Again, the degrees are the same, so it's front number 5 over front number 2. So it's y equals 5 over 2. If we go to graph this, it's about y equals 2.5. So we do our dot at 2.5. So once we have our x-intercepts and our asymptotes, and we put those on the graph, we then can put in our graphing calculator. So for example, for the top one, we would go y equals, we put whatever's in the numerator in parentheses. So we would do 2x squared plus 3, and then we would hit divided by whatever we have in our denominator, in this case x cubed. I always like to do zoom standard. Look at the graph. To get some data points, you can hit trace, number, enter, and at the bottom of the screen it will say whatever your values are, whether your ordered pairs. and you can draw a rough sketch.